Welcome to the podcast. On this episode, I'm chatting to Peter Sherry, who owns a small independent beer and wine shop called the Beerhive. He's doing a great job. In fact, he has picked up a Retailer of the Year award 2 years running. So if you've ever wondered what it takes to run a successful beer shop, listen to Pete. He's been there, seen it, and now he wears the t-shirt. Talking to Pete is great fun. He is chatty and engaging, and that seems to be a key ingredient in his business. A lot of what it's all about is communication with the customers, the brewers and the distributors, but also keeping on top of social media and generally keeping his finger on the pulse in the beer scene. He's not just selling a product, but his knowledge of all things beery. So let's start at the beginning. What made you decide to open your own beer shop?
It started when I was in Oddbins, back on George Street, and I got a part-time job when I was a student. And when I was like a student and just looking for any kind of part-time work basically, and walked into an Oddbins, and Andy Donaldson, he got a good. He was a really good guy, and he took me in. And I didn't know anything about wine, beer, anything, and just took me on the spot. And
you learned on the job,
but they didn't. Oddbins back then, which was I don't know, like 15 odd years ago now. They were doing a bit of beer, but it was mostly wine that I got trained in for the first, I don't know, about 5 years of my career. Jumped around doing part-time hours in all the shops for Oddbins and really loved it. Never really thought I was, that was what I was going to do. You never do. Every time you get interviewed, to get a full-time position, or they do reviews each year, they'd always say, what is it? So where does this want you to go? Where do you want to go with this?
Yeah. And
you always put down, oh, it's to start your own shop. But that was like, just the thing you said in the interview. Everybody said
Made
that.
You sound committed.
Exactly, but you never really, I think I contemplated it, but you never really think it's possible. And then I was mostly working towards getting a full-time position, which I eventually did after a few years down in Stockbridge, and worked with a lot of great managers, a lot of good people who are still friends of mine to this day. I started down there, and I was there for about 2 or 3 years, and in that time they got taken over by, Oddbins changed hands a lot, and they got bought out by Castel Frere, this French company who owned Nicolas as a chain, of shops over in Paris, and they were and a little bit in London, and they were coming up to Scotland, so they tried to change they changed a few of the shops to Nicolas. So it was pretty heartbreaking for me and Craig and Cheska. We did the changeover, so we had to demolish our shop basically. And we had really good times there. That was probably one of my best positions, I think. Well, all the shops I worked in were great fun, but that one especially. And Stockbridge is a good area. That shop's now, I think, a Spanish deli. Spanish deli type thing. And every time I walk in, I'm just like, went in with my mum the other month when it changed. Well, I would say it was probably longer than that ago actually. And there was all the little office up where we used to have the office and downstairs. I think our names will still be, so you write names and stuff in your cellar. So there's probably a few of them.
That's great.
Yeah, still sitting around. I remember when we cleared it out. Actually, for some reason we had a pair of roller blades and a bike down there. It's tiny cell. I mean, it's double the size of this, but I remember Craig cycling around and me. Grabbing onto the back of the bike with the rollerblades. We had good fun. But anyway, so I was there for a while, and then we changed it to Nicolas, and I think Craig stuck around for a fair bit, and then what happened? Yeah, and then Nicolas, and then I got my first managed position for Morningside shop. Yeah, and I moved up there, but I ran the shop by myself because it was quite a quiet, small shop. And I knew they'd give me a little bit more money for that as well.
Okay, good.
But it was a very dead shop. I did try my best to do it. You could tastings, door to door work.
Yeah.
The shop was very clean, very tidy because I had a lot of time on my hands.
Polishing the balls.
Pretty much. And then the rest of it. But to be honest, I think Nicola didn't really take care of Scotland, or maybe they didn't know how to take care of it. I mean, they did what I guess was their best. I wouldn't know because they didn't really contact me that much.
All right. Okay.
But when they did stop by, they were just like, "Oh, everything's beautiful, and just keep doing what you're doing." And I'm like, "Well, all right, but if you gave me," because it was 90% French wine, which I think, to be honest, was really what what the major problem was.
Okay.
Not that there's anything wrong with French wine, of course, but I think selection, you know, as you can see today, the only way that people can keep going is versatility. I think, you know.
Yeah.
So if you've got just one specific thing, I don't know, it better be a really good specific thing. And in the wine and beer world, well, you know, there is no one specific thing, you know. I suppose you could try and be an IPA specialist, that might work, but still pretty dull.
Yeah,
I think people would still complain.
Yeah.
So it was the same thing with wine, really. They did that sort of thing. So yeah, after about a year, I think under a year there, I left that and was kind of peeved off with the company because I was really bored. You know, I mean, the kick for me from this is, you know, the thing I really loved about it was the customers enjoying, you know, what we did.
Yeah.
Like I remember the first time I ran down in Stockbridge. In fact, my first, you know, local customer, because when you're part time you jump around. So I knew some of the locals, but you're never there enough. So down in Stockbridge, once you get to know some of the locals, they would come back, you know, and they would say, "Oh, that wine went really well. You know, whatever it was, steak last night."
Okay.
And you get this little like buzz from it, and you're kind of like quite happy about that. So I never really thought anything of it because I was still just like a student, you know, and I didn't really think of this as a career. I just thought it was your 20s or whatever, just doing whatever you're doing and enjoying it. So, and I did WSCTs and, you know, the study and stuff, which was really good fun. And Oddbins had a really good tasting kind of, you know, we had a lot of staff tastings that were really fun and quite relaxed, and you'd learn a lot because everyone had banter and all that. So, and Nicola, obviously, once I got into that, didn't have any of that. So, yeah, that was a bit of a downer. But, you know, I was doing managerial jobs, but there originally wasn't, you know, if you're running a shop from like, I think it was like 12 till 8, and yeah, once you've done everything, you know, you just kind of sit around, and I was like, you know, so it took the buzz out of it for me. So after that, I got into bar trade for a little bit because I wanted chat. Yeah. And I worked for, where was it? Anna and Mike Christopherson from Pierce's and Boda Bar and all that. Yeah. So they were really good. I went down to Sophie's Bar and worked there for a couple of years, and that was perfect because it was like filled with locals and really nice little bar, and that was fine. But I didn't really get the same buzz as I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was down there just pulling pints, but you know, and the banter and stuff. But you didn't get the kick from the product, right? Like you didn't obviously serve a pint of Crucifixi and say, and they go, "That's amazing." You know, it doesn't really work like that. You know, maybe in craft beer bars, I suppose it'd be, but at that point there wasn't really anything. We did some cocktails and stuff, but ultimately you were just doing what your job entailed. And then I kind of had all sorts of ideas of what I wanted to be. Everything from what was the craziest? I think it was like a variation of a park ranger. Right. But all these ideas, I know it was so stupid. There was so many things that, because, you know, if you're indecisive like I am, you know, you're like, well, what do I want to be? So what do you like? And the thing was, I didn't want to be down. I didn't want to be inside anymore, because obviously I'd spent a lot of time in retail and in quiet retail, and then so I was thinking, right, I'll just do be outside. What can I do outside? Taking care of a park thing. So I went up to there's like some sort of outdoors university type thing, something up the north of Edinburgh, and I went up there for an open day and sat in some of the classes and you know, and spoke to the teachers and all that, and I think it was just like halfway through I was like, what the fuck am I doing here? This isn't, what am I gonna be? Fucking Walker, Texas Range? You know, get out of here. So I got out of there and went back to the drawing board. And you're basically just going through like the A to Z of jobs, basically. So, you know. The thing that led me to my next job was, because I quit there eventually, and I think I went back to stay with my parents for a bit to, you know, figure your life out. And they lived back in Hamilton. That's where I'm from originally. And I sat down in there for quite a while, I can't remember, like 6 months or something, and I ended up just coming back into town wanting to just earn a little bit of money, because I'd ran out of cash. I was living off of like handouts from my mum and dad, and you know, doing nothing, and I stumbled across, in fact I'd asked them before, but it was James at Cornelius,
Oh, right,
up at Easter Road. But he used to obviously be in Oddbins, and I used to hear his name from my mate Craig, who was my manager. And funnily enough, because we said earlier, I said to him after, I think it was one of my interviews, yearly interviews, and I'd said I'd started a shop. And I remember I went back in and I told him, I said, the usual, started a shop. And I said, has anyone actually started a shop from Oddbins in the years? And he was like, yeah, James Roble. And I was like, who's that? And they said, over in Easter Road, and told me a whole story about him and how he's a bit of a beer specialist and all this. And that I don't think he really aimed to do the beer thing. But, so it was really coincidental and weird that many years later I ended up working for him. But I'd stumbled in one day, and I think he said, yeah, you've got a great CV and he'd probably hire me, but it's dead man's shoes, because Jo was there, this girl that had the assistant manager position. And I kind of remember the first time I'd spoken to him, and I don't know what this period of time in between this was, but I'd spoken to him and said dead man's shoes. I remember Jo coming out the back with a cup of tea, and I was like joking to her like, oh, you're not planning on like getting hit by a car or anything? She was like, no. Holding the teacup, and I remember that, so I left. And then whatever happened, I came back one day, handed him my CV, and he was immediately like, I guess just timing wise, he was looking for somebody.
Right.
So sat in there. And obviously coming like through the bar trade, none of my product knowledge was really used at all. Any of the stuff I'd learned in Oddbins, and then 3 years in bar trade, you're just, sitting and rusting, And funnily enough, I remember two customers who are a lovely couple that used to, I don't think they drink in Sophie's anymore, but they're now customers here of mine.
Okay.
And there's a lovely couple, and I remember when I was sitting down in Sophie's bar trying to, in the last half year, whatever it was, I was trying, I don't know what I want to be and all this. And they said that I should get back into retail. And I was like, no, but it was so boring. It was so boring at the end. I had no one to chat to and no interaction. And they were like, no. And I just kind of went off the idea. But it's so funny because I told them there, it's like after that, and I ended up doing this. Yes. Like you full just circle. Do this full circle, So
So did Cornelius give you the idea to specialise in beer? Then?
Oh, totally. Yeah. I would say it's. A lot is owed to every manager along the way, but especially James. Not just because James is James, mostly because James is a very unique, lovely guy, but because his business runs in such a way that I got to learn about independent business. That was the thing that was totally new to me, was working with all these products for years and years and years. And I never knew anything about how much they were worth, or margin, or where they come from, or how you order them. All of these things, And what I did notice, that once you actually knew what you make on something, there was this whole part of me that got a little bit more passionate about working for James. Yes. Because the first time I remember sitting down on like a Monday or whatever, maybe a couple of weeks into the job, and him going, right, ordering, and you'd bring out a book, whatever, supplier book, and you'd look through it, and you're looking at it, and he kind of he doesn't throw you into the deep end, but he, there's not like a whole very careful planning thing, but that was the good thing about working with James, was, you just kind of do stuff, and you're like, okay. But I remember thinking like, what if I spend too much money? And he's got his, he's got his picture of his two twin boys that he's got, and he's a family, and this is his business, and I'm like at the helm, and you're just like shit scared, and you're like, fuck, what am I gonna do? And yeah, of course, over the years I've screwed up many a time, but so did he, but that was the thing that I remember, because obviously that's what put me on. I was like, well, I've got to be really careful that I buy the right thing, or I could flatten his business. What if I pick the wrong thing? It's thousands and thousands of pounds. You never know,
Yeah.
Obviously it was, and it was a couple of cases of beer and whatever, and you get the hang of it. But it took me a fair while to kind of concentrate and realise what I was buying, and then calculating to put things on the system and all these little things that you have to do. And you see the numbers, and eventually I gathered how much you're making on these. And in general sense, for any shop, even the greediest of margins, you're still not really. It's pennies, and you're thinking, wow, well, all of this, and you're looking around and you're looking at how much sales, and James has got a very good business, but you're still just like surprised at, how tough this is, and then you've got tax, and then you've got all these things. So that kind of made me a little bit more eager to do, even, not that I wouldn't have been driven in the job, but a little bit more eager to to try hard because it was for James and for his family.
Yes,
And I like pressure on myself a little bit. It keeps me going, and sometimes you can make up pressure for yourself. Just anything that will keep your focus. So I was doing that for him for many years, and the beer kind of came with that. Obviously I dealt in beer a little bit, but he introduced me to so many good things, and it was more the reaction that I saw from people. They would always be wowed by his beer section. They would always be, taken back, quite like, oh wow, so much beer, And I didn't know much about it, but I gathered quite a lot of information, and when also I realised James had a very good name for himself in town. I started to go to beer events and meet people, and he was very happy with that. He just, he's obviously a family man, so he doesn't go out to the pub as much. And he was always like, oh no, you go and you represent us and stuff. And I really enjoyed it, and just lots of great events and everything.
It's a big scene when you dip your toe
Oh,
in.
totally, and it's so warm, and especially if you're in retail, people knew the Cornelius name, so I could hand them a card, and it'd be inviting,
Yes.
And you'd just meet good people, and also you'd hear what people are talking about and why they're talking about it, and all this debate and what's beneficial. I thought, I was out there trying to obviously just be involved and learn stuff, and you find out what's beneficial and what's just, I don't know, like what you call it, internet trolling or whatever. All of that jazz. Comes with any scene, I think. Comes with any product, any whatever, And that's stuff I really don't try to stay away from. I don't really involve myself in it. But it's a big part of this. It is. I get the blogs and Rate Beer and Untapped and all these things are all and what people are passionate about and what they want to shout about or what they want to whisper about. All these things. And they always want like a shop or a bar to be involved and come in because I don't know why they feel like we might put a stamp of approval on it, but it doesn't benefit us as a company. It's the same with like football or politics. It's just not a very wise thing to involve yourself in these set things. Well, that's a personal
absolutely
thing.
I completely agree. You become someone's vested interest, and it takes you away from what you want to do.
Well, also it's just not good for trade. Why would if I pick a side, I'm losing out on one of the customers.
That's
so
true.
There's no point in that. I mean, the thing that they might be affected by my personal views. Obviously in a shop like this, it is an extension of me. But if I'm a different person at home to I am in here, it's not. It's that person doesn't need to be in here. It's it's about my passionate side for beer and wine and all that. And I just try and give people what they want at good, honest prices and keep it really simple. I mean, that's the thing. I do like everything to be a little bit black and white if I can make it. Certainly, you want to always do more for your customers, but there's stuff that over the years people have wanted from the shop, like more tastings or events and things like that. And the only reason I've avoided that is because we're too damn busy.
Well, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an event space, and also, to be honest, a lot of the other shops do it, and they do it really well. And there's no point in me, coming in and trying to do something that, it would take us. I'm quite pernickety about things, and I would try and organise it to the T. And it's easier for me to just stand and sell stuff. If that's what people like about us, for us to be quite warm and we have a great time in the shop. All three or four of us, we have a good laugh. And I'd like to think I'm a reasonably easygoing boss.
Good.
But
helps.
But I think it's because we keep things simple. We're all about product knowledge. So we drink a lot, we talk a lot about it, and we make sure we know what's going on. With a range this big, to be honest, that's really all it is management. It's management of the stock.
But that's one of the key questions I had for you. How do you decide? Obviously you listen to what bloggers and the general public says, and obviously if someone's punting a new product, you probably get asked for it and you'll need to have it in. But with a selection so vast, where do you start? I mean, it sounds like a huge task.
Well, week to week,
follow your gut, or?
Funnily enough, James, my old boss, I remember when I left him and I was starting to set up, and I asked him a few things like, how hard is it to do what I'm about to do, and he said setting up a business is difficult, running a business is easier.
Right.
And he's right. He was very right in a lot of things he said. The setting up was crazy. Like, I mean, you picture what you want in your head.
Yeah.
You know, if you're talking about what to buy when you start, that's very, very difficult. It was very difficult for me. I mean, I knew what I wanted, but there's things you didn't want to do. Like, I didn't want to mimic what James was doing.
Yeah.
You know, he's a friend of mine. I told him that. We sat down and I made sure I said, you know, I'm not just going to take this and double it up somewhere else in town because that's just not fair. But obviously, James is like surgical palate, you know, brilliant guy, knows what he's doing. So when it came to wine, you know, I had the living room covered with maps and shelving things that I'd done, and all these different things, how to map it out, plus all my companies and all the contacts I'd obviously gathered. And you know, we started from a beneficial point because I'd got a head start on all of this stuff. Yeah, the picking of the wines is hard because if you go to a certain region between, say, 4 companies and you're looking for whatever, a Côte de Rhône white, and at that point I was like, oh yeah, I'll go for that one. Oh no, wait, that's James's. And then you're like, well, you know, and obviously we ended up, I mean, a lot of the shops in town, but I was trying to be so careful at that point. So I think over the years you learn that 2 shops having the same wine, you know, different price points or whatever, isn't the worst thing in the world, you know. There really is. There's a lot of wine out there, but for the suppliers and who likes what and the classics and all these things, a lot of them run the same way. After that, then I suppose if you wanted to think that 50p or £1 cheaper or more expensive would make a customer change their local shop, then fine, but I don't believe that. I think it's down to service and convenience, really. I mean, even I've proved that because, you know, my giant rant, as I always have, against Tesco, which is right there, which is, you know, as James, funnily enough, always said, he said, you know, when I was starting up, I worried about that and how much it would affect me, and he was like, no, it's fine, you know, it'll bring people to the area, and he's totally right. You know, people who go into Tesco, I give them their money because it's convenient, because I'm in a rush, I need a sandwich, I didn't make my lunch, so I go and I give them money. But most of the time, my first couple of years was spent a lot saying a lot of negative things about Tesco. I mean, they are very bad at what they do and how they do it, and they really are an evil thing that should stop. But it would take the whole world, you know, or the whole country, in fact, to stop for a minute and boycott the thing for more than a couple of days. And that is something that needs to be achieved in a whole bunch of more important areas.
You're right.
And we're not, you know, as a nation, I'm not being defeatist and say we're already screwed, so let's just keep going. But to a degree with these things, it's horrible the way they do it. It's the de-education. That's the thing that I really hate, is that, you know, people don't know that $3.99 wine doesn't exist anymore, or you know, or what the value of Black Isle Blonde actually is. You know, all of these things that they do with these price points damages everything we do. And also, you know, in a sense, I know that they do sell to them, and that's fine. Like some of the brands, Black Isle, Orkney Atlas, whoever. But legally they can't, you know, mess with what they're going to put it at price point. But you know, the way they're putting it out at cost and stuff is just really pissing all over their careers and mine. You know, in everything we do here, the whole point of what this is not to cheapen it. It's that people, you know, don't mind paying the actual price, the actual value of this IPA or this dark ale. And you know, trying to explain that to a customer, you have to kind of judge the customer. I mean, we get it time and time again, but you really got to bite your lip. I mean, I bite my lip anyway. I know a few people don't, but you know, to a degree, I'm just like, well, you know, in Black Isle Blonde is a thing that has been confused across the city. I don't think anybody knows really where it's supposed to be. Is it £3, £3.50? Is it £2.80? Is it £1.70? You know, and that's where it is. So people come in and they'll go, oh, bit cheeky, you know, pointing to whatever it would be price wise on Black Isle Blonde, and I'm like, and you have to kind of go, in what way, you know, what way are we being cheeky, or Black Isle being cheeky? What do you mean? And it leads to this conversation, and it's either a dad with a pram who doesn't really care. He's just been buying Black Isle Blonde at the price he has been. He's walked into this shop and he sees it there, and I can do my very best without being arrogant to kind of say, well, look, you know, there's something else going on here, you know. So yeah, I mean that all comes into it, but. Get back to your original question, how do you pick it? Well, I mean, yeah, you have to stay in contact with everything, but you also have to like kind of take take a day out of it. Sunday tends to me. I've tried with Sundays. I tried to make it Mondays, but Sundays is my kind of my day to like not be on Twitter, not be on Facebook. I hate social media. Like I'm afraid I'm just not a fan. I don't really use it that much. But if it wasn't for the business, you know, people use it all the time. Obviously, you know, for seeing what we've got. To be honest, it makes sense anyway because our range changes dramatically pretty much every couple of days, you know, and we couldn't really write down a stock list because it would just be another one of those jobs that we have to we don't have time for to go and change the list because I've bought in 5 new beers. By the time we've put them on the list, probably 3 of them sold. You know, what's the point really? And anyway, we like dealing with people face to face or email to email or whatever channel they want to speak to us in. So we just say, what do you want, and we'll do it for you. I mean, that's really what these businesses are about. Personal touch. I mean, that's the one thing that Tesco and all these people can't do. Is they can't, you know, you can't ask them for it, and even when you do, they don't really know what you're talking about, and there'll be a little meeting of 6 people for them to check every aisle the same as you would have anyway. So you know, we kind of like that. We'll take your name, we'll do what we can, and we'll get back to you. I mean, we have a long list of requests. Once you open that can of worms, it goes on and on and on. And you know, some of it's more justified than others, but you just got to do your job and kind of judge it. And you can always try. You can definitely always try. You know, even if it's something you've never heard of and you're pretty sure it's not in the country or has ever been. And you want them to buy a case. You know, you can't order in. I mean, I used to do that quite a lot, but you end up getting stung quite a few times. People just disappear. You know, you're left with like 40, 60 quid that you've spent and nobody wants it, you know. Funnily enough, nobody wants it because I didn't buy it in. I was buying it in for you. But you know, you can't really. You'd be surprised at how people deal with retail. But you know, some are nicer than others. But it's fine. You just keep doing your job, you know. So I mean, with the beer range, you've just got to really pay attention to everything that's happening. I mean, a lot of it these days with distributors. Good, you know, we've got a lot of good distributors. We've got a lot of good breweries. They're all doing an excellent job, but I don't envy them because basically they're doing, you know, any one of them are all doing what I'm doing except on a huger scale. You know, what I do is pretty difficult, you know, with your budgeting and you're trying to, you know, there's stuff that just needs to happen, just stuff needs to be bought. You'll just see it and you'll just know you need to buy it. So you've always got to have money for that, and then you've got all your core stuff, and then you've got things that people have requested, and then you've got a whole bunch. So there's constant lists. In fact, the guys constantly, even though I use iPhones and iPads and stuff, I'm not as rigorous with it. There's collection of little bits of paper in my pockets and all over the place, and they have a right good laugh at some of the stuff I'll scribble down because it just won't make sense. Sometimes it'll be like just words, and everyone says, so we're going to go through your pile up here, you know. So we've got a number, and then we've got this word here, and then we've got a little picture of something. What's this? And I don't remember. I'm like, it could be. Oh no, wait, it's that thing with the thing, right? You know. So yeah, it's not, and these are the things that, like I said to you before, is you'd love to systemize these things. You know, you can. It'd be great, but it would take AI of some massive degree, and AI with some sort of passion for beer and social media, and also you got to read between the lines. You see a bunch of people talking about something, they're saying it's really great, and you're like, oh right, so you know, beer, cider fans or wine fans, and they're talking about something great. We should chase that. But then there's a few other things you got to read into, and you got to look at it and go, well, did I see this before? You know, I've seen this kind of thing. It comes and it goes really quickly. Is it worth investing in? What's the price point? You know, all these things. You know, whether you should get it or not. But it's fun. I just wish there'd be more time because of all of the core stuff that's happening, all the stuff that needs to happen. It just becomes, the bar has just went up and up and up and up and up. Before you know it, you've got so many permanents that it's really good to have a team. You know, it's really good. I mean, I'd love to be able to run this business by myself, but you just couldn't do it. Not with the level of customers and the stocking up and the, you know. I mean, I used to struggle. I mean, the first 2 years I pretty much did by myself. You know, a little bit of help, and I pretty much lived in here, you know, day and night. And I tried to manage my time pretty well, but it was very stressful because at that point, obviously, we weren't that busy. I mean, we were all right, you know, and we were, you know, I was happy with that. But with the paperwork and everything, all these things that I'd aimed to do the way I was doing them are very in-depth. So once it got that we started getting busier and busier, I was still trying to strive to do these things, and they were just like, and some people around me, you know, your family or your friends are kind of like, you know, what, I wouldn't be concentrating on this. And I'm like, no, but this will make things better.
Yeah.
If I can do this, then it makes this better.
Yeah.
And no, man, it doesn't work like that. You really need to delegate.
Yeah.
You know, it's a word that I had to learn a lot about.
You need to learn the concept as well. The word isn't good enough.
No, exactly. It's the concept. It's like knowing that you can't achieve everything.
Yeah.
And I think I'd be surprised. I mean, you said you've got a business. I think that everybody gets into business and thinks that they can do everything.
Yeah.
And also, you know, don't get me wrong, it's supposed to make money, and I knew that if I could do everything myself, I'd make more money, right? I would have less outgoing costs, but it's just not possible, because the main thing is, at the end of the day for us, and the thing I've always had the whole way through, is we'd never ever skimp if it leads to damage on the customer.
Yes.
One of the reasons I haven't scaled up yet, everybody wants me to get another shop and all this, and I'm like, look, what I do, the way I do it, you know, I don't want to not be on the floor. You know, I don't want to be in a head office. I don't want to have a little office, you know, where I sit and do spreadsheets and all that, because what I learned by standing on the floor and listening to people and seeing them and seeing their action, everything down to their movements, and you know, a lot of them walk into a shop like this and they feel very intimidated, and I can understand that. There's a lot of stuff around, you know, it can be anything, it can be ego, it can be whatever, you know, they just don't understand it and they don't want to admit it. You know, I meet people like that all the time, and I guess because we know a little bit about it, we don't really think like that, I suppose. But you've really got to. I always try and put myself in the customer's position and gently try and enter them into it, and that's why we've got the kegerator, so I can give people samples, I can relax them, anything to relax them.
Okay.
Because you know they're in there and it's a gift, or it's for an important dinner, a girlfriend, whatever it could be. It's always something, and they'll have a story, and you know. We go, look, you know, don't worry, we're going to have you leave here with the right thing, or our best guess. Yeah. And everything they'll give you is going to be counterproductive. It's going to be words that don't match up. You know, when it's a wine, it's always not too sweet, but also not too dry, and not too bitter, but also, you know, like a Saving gone, you know, and it'll be a million things, and you've got to, just take it all in, translate it, and then. And usually, more than often than not, it's a very middle of the road product that they'll end up getting. You know, unless it's for a very specific thing. And you can always, you know, with wine, it's matching to food's fine. With beer, you know, a lot of the time you'll end up backtracking maybe to Germany. I'd say, you know, safe but good upgraded lagers. You know, we're talking to people if they're drinking Stella or whatever it will be. You know, but the main thing we could try and get out of them is, you know, do you recognise anything? Do you recognise any? You know, any numbers, any colours, you know, and brands that you've seen them having, and then this is the same with, like, I think what big companies do is take the data we get. We talk to a lot of marketing companies because our wall of beer is quite vast and big, and it is, I think, pretty unique to see. I'm sure a lot of shops have this with their wall of beer. Is like how the behaviour of customers around it. I find it fascinating. Like I've done a lot of charts with this, and how, because I remember back in, I think it was Nicola or Odd Bins, where you'd study, you know, customer patterns in your shop, like how they walk, and they'll usually be the same sort of customer patterns, and where they stop and why, psychological and all this. Could be to do with colours, commitment. I find it's a lot to do with commitment, because our shop's long and thin, so it's like, you know, it's kind of scary for them to go right into the belly of the beast. Right. If it's quiet. It's like a cave. Yeah, exactly. You know, and you know the whole, you know, reading the back of a bottle, and you know it's in French, but they're not reading it. They're just standing staring at it, pretending to read it. We get it. You feel uncomfortable for some reason, you know, or you think I'm going to come over and like take a whole bunch of your money, you know, because you know you don't know about wine or you don't know about beer. But you know, it's the complete opposite of that. I'm sure every independent, good or bad, says that we're trying to do an honest trade. Yeah. And honestly, if they knew the ins and outs of what we do and how, you know, little money it makes, you know, trust me, you know, we want to get our job done and move on to the next customer. That's all we want to do. You got to do this a million times. It's really, there's no, you know, we'll take as much time as you want us to take, but ultimately. You know, we just want to do move on. Next thing. It's
not your objective is to tie them up in a massive.
No, I mean we get very happy about good sales and stuff. You know, the guys we all, you know, if we do if someone buys some really interesting product, we're really happy about it. But we always really want it to go to the right person. You know, anyone. You know, I've seen it over the years. I don't think it happens as much as maybe back in the day. I think but but people upselling because they can. Some of the companies I've worked with did come to me and I'd say that, this product's not really worthy of this price point, and it's also, a bit out of date or whatever it will be.
Yeah.
And they said, "Oh, just upsell it." And I'm like, all right. But there's one thing I couldn't do to our customers. I can't lie very good. I'm not very good at lying. So if we have something that we can't work with, I'm not a big cider fan, for instance. We don't have a huge cider range. I don't drink it a lot. I don't hate the stuff, I just don't drink it a lot.
Right.
I can't really talk about it very passionately. I did like Thistley Cross, and we have a couple of other, older styles, sort of more robust. Normandy cider, that sort of thing's quite good. But it's something that I always thought we'd work on, or I'd bring somebody in to to kind of sort that, because what we do is we have all our favourites, but we have honest banter where if I'm not a huge fan of something, I think you've always got to keep it as a level of don't deliberately not sell it, but if there's something I don't like about a beer, we'll happily say it. And there's always counter arguments. It's good. Like, I think me and James back in Cornelius had the same thing. Like, we had a lot of, like, when we try wines together and stuff, like if he liked it and I hated it, or I liked it and he hated it, it would always be like, right, well, it's yours, so if you're bringing it in, you sell it.
Right, okay.
And it's nice because it's a challenge, and it's same here, where I've tried to keep that, like I said, I've tried to take a lot of things that I learned from Oddbins and James and implement it mostly into the runnings of how, because I found all of the shops I worked in really enjoyable, and it's one of the things that kept me very happy about working there.
Yeah.
If you just come in and say, right, just stock up all day and serve customers, and I remember I worked for, because right now I probably won't name the name of the company, but it was like a chain of deli kind of newsagent type things, and one of the things was you weren't allowed to talk at the tills. Like if you had two people on, you weren't allowed to talk to each other the whole day, which I always thought was really brutal. I mean, maybe that's normal in some places, but it was I mean, we did anyway, but if we got caught, we'd get into trouble. And
how bizarre.
Yeah, I know. And it was stuff like that. These were little like part-time student jobs I had, and it's things like that stick in your mind, because I was thinking, well, how could you cope with that? It was already a shit job, and you're not even going to let me cope by talking to someone through it? Fuck's sake. So I've tried to, and I was a big fan of the 90s. So I always wanted to, when we started up, obviously I tried my best with good, really, really, like, intense low pricing, and like intense low, but we're next to a Tesco, and what I didn't want was my first wave of customers coming in and judging, like, going, oh, here's another expensive independent, because that's what you do here a lot, is people assume that if you're an independent you're going to be expensive. I don't think any of us, all the shops in town, we're all averagely not far off each other's pricing, and it's a normal price, it's sustainable, world we're trying to live in here, and we're just all selling things. Everyone could do a little bit of a price cut here or there, but what, and I think most people know what Tesco or anyone, the whole milk thing with the farmers pulling everything up. I mean, like if for whatever reason it'd be a good thing that these guys go under, nobody really does know what stuff's worth. And that's the thing, is like independence is just, we're just selling it what people should be paying. In my opinion, it's not all about pricing, it's value for money and everything else, but ultimately when it comes down to it, there's so many people running around that and it's not their job to care. I'm not complaining about them, but I wish there was a little bit more awareness. I mean, there is a lot of people. There was one guy that came in my second year, I remember, and he was older guy, and he said, I gave him a little bit of chat about Tesco, because they do ask. I've toned it down a little bit, because I didn't want to spend my entire career talking about the downside of Tesco, but we a lot of people in the wine trade feel the same way. Anyway, so he explains the ins and outs of what they do. They buy in bulk and they cut it down, whatever. And he said, I haven't been in a Tesco in 10 years or something like that.
All right.
It was like in that region of like a decade or 7 years, and he'd deliberately done that. And I found that so inspiring. I was like, here's me giving my lame little propaganda thing about the big giants versus the little guy, and in 10 minutes I'll probably walk out and give them some of my bloody money. I almost felt ashamed, and this guy has achieved it for the last decades. I mean, I could do it. I mean, I should do it. Everyone should do it. But ultimately, you know, these days I think it's actually really, they've got a little bit further. I mean, you know, it's ridiculous how many we've got now.
Yeah.
It's just everywhere. You couldn't not be convenient. You know, you'd have to actually try really hard to get to an independent shop.
Yeah.
You know, for bread, milk, and cheese and all that stuff. You know, for booze, I think we're all right. There's quite a few of us all darted around, but you know, they can't win because we do provide a service. And I always find it very interesting that Tesco, even though they can afford a lot, never put a wine advisor in their section. To be honest, there's probably not much to talk about in that section anyway. But you know, a lot of it's not what it says it is, basically. You know, so yeah, I mean, you know, all these things do affect why we pick what we do, and vice versa. You know, some of our suppliers do sell to Tesco and to the big giants. And you know, our reps are very good. I trust a lot of them, and you know, you've got to say, you know, are you going to go in? Some of them go in under another label, and that's culpable. I'll be honest. You know, it doesn't work. I know a few breweries have tried to do it. You know, and they're like, this is the label for us, and this is the label for them, and I'm like, yeah, but I mean, it's a very different thing. You could get away with maybe the psychological thing where a customer would not care as much. They probably wouldn't care that much anyway if it was the same price. They don't really think like that about wine, I don't think. You know, a lot of the, like Waitrose and stuff, I'm really talking about Tesco in general, and maybe Asda, I suppose, because Waitrose takes care of its booze pretty reasonably. They're quite good, same Marks and Sparks and stuff. But on the beer side of things, it's like, I don't know, I mean, like, you know, Gavin from Tempest, you know, he's done a bit. This is the Lidl deals, or Aldi, whatever one, they do the Good Beer Festival. And it is a good thing. It is, ultimately. I think it's something needed in beer, but in the right way for the right brewery. And I'm not saying I would know exactly which one, but, you know, it would obviously affect us if it's in everywhere. It's more the pricing, you know, the pricing. It's not so much like people who love Tempest will buy Tempest. You know, they're very established. My favourite Scottish brewery by far. I've worked with them for ages. He's very careful. Your quality control's outstanding. You know, there isn't, and it never had any faults. You know, and yeah, he's a very, very talented guy, and they've scaled up, and obviously they do need more levels of turnover and stuff, so we can understand that. Same with, I spoke to the guy from 4Pure, I think Tom was his name, really, really bright guy, and you know, he in fact said that, you know, some of the core range, which I liked when they first came out, we haven't had them in for a while. They're quite affordable, pills and red, you know, IP and pale and stuff. And I said to him, we haven't had them in for a while, but you know, I'd be happy to get them back in. And he was actually saying, well, actually, you know, those are going into like Marks and Spencers and stuff. And it was almost like encouraging us to not go on that band, you know, jump on that so much. I mean, we can get them if we want. And to be honest, we don't have a Marks and Spencers around, but still, it will affect the general look on that brand, I think, and what people think it's worth. You know, so it was interesting to hear. And I mean, I do as I'm told, you know, by these brewers and winemakers. You know, I always say to them, you know, just whatever you want, and I'll achieve it. You know, we're here and we're on the front line, and I'll get 20 minutes with a customer, and I'll tell them, you know, who you are and why I like selling your beer and why I like your beer and what it's for. You know, and why it's at this price point. So if you don't want me to have that range, fine, and I can understand it, but also it's this, you know, duty escalator plus all these things. That means, you know, when you make a small amount of beer, you can make a small amount of money. If you make a medium amount of beer, you don't make any money. And then you got to make, you know, a ridiculously high amount of beer and sell it to make any sort of real money. And a lot of breweries are doing that, like Beavertown, you know, obviously 4Pure, I think a few of them have got their eye on the high end thing. And to be honest, you know, as much as I go on and on about Tesco, we couldn't, you know, I say if there was a million of us, there is a million of us, you know, shop wise, and we still couldn't really deliver, I don't think, that direct, regular pallets and pallets of beer and sell it. I mean, okay, yeah, Beavertown, Magic Rock, a few of them are getting that way, but you know, it's not a bubble. It's just the focus is always going to change. You know, you can never really see week to week where it's going to go, what's going to happen. And if it changes, that's why I like to keep small. I can roll with the punches. But if you scale up, you know, you're going to need somebody that's going to be buying regularly and selling regularly. And maybe it's not going to be. I still think that if you were to sell, I don't know, Beavertown or not that he does into multiples, but a brand of that, I don't know, the prestigiousness,
Yes.
they would be fine selling at full price, full margin. I mean, in a supermarket. I don't really see the point in them discounting it.
True.
I mean, I've seen some crazy stuff down south go onto people's shelves, like local small, I think booths, in fact, and a few other smaller multiples, and they have some crazy good stuff on the shelf at crazy prices. And people buy it, and some of the times it's tickers or craft enthusiasts that are buying these things and finding them and going, oh, what a gem I found, and stuff like that. That's great, but if you found it at the price I was doing it at, or James or Vino or anybody, they would still buy it. You've still found a great beer where you didn't expect to find one.
Yes.
And I think this is the thing that they really don't understand, is that a lot of our customers don't really pay attention that much to price.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme. Certainly, I think you'd have to be taking the piss in a giant way for somebody to storm out your shop. I mean, the people who still walkouts, everybody gets walkouts, but you get walkouts because you didn't, we always leave that lovely gap where they get the lay of the land, they walk in, they're looking for something, they're sure from the start that you don't have it. They're just 100% sure you don't have it, and you'll stop them once you feel it's appropriate and say, oh, can I help you? And they go, no, it's okay. And you go, was it something in particular? And they go, oh yeah, you don't sell gin, do you? With the wall of gin behind me.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Right.
Oh, you do? Right. Yeah. I mean, it's frustrating. I think everybody finds it very frustrating that it's just awareness. But I think it comes back to this pressure that people feel when they walk into a shop. I think they just get overrun with, I don't know, trying to, either they're really busy and they're just concentrating. That's another thing. But I think they just get overrun with there's too many things, and they think that they're going to get laughed at or something like that. Some sort of confidence thing.
You're some kind of snob that's going to laugh at
them. Yeah, totally. I mean, don't get me wrong. The wine trade's been building the snobbery for decades. I don't expect, and so is let's be honest, the beer market's going the same way. But I like I say, I don't enter into the politics of this stuff. In fact, I hate it. I think it's counterproductive to the future of this thing, is creating these little clubs where nobody's allowed in but the people who knew that this was supposed to be this and that's supposed to be that. That's great. I'm saying it can exist. It's fine for it to exist. I just don't think it would. I mean, maybe it's the business side of it. It certainly wouldn't benefit me to laugh somebody out who didn't know what a Radler was or an IPA or what. We still have a lot of people coming in saying IPA or DIPA. Really irks me, but I'm not going to correct them because you could say that. There's nothing wrong with it. Just sounds stupid to me, right? So and some of the stuff we've actually lost sales because 2 days later we realised the person was saying, what was it? There was one for Imperial, I think it was Russian Imperial Stout or something, and he said it has a word. I don't even remember what it was he'd said. And I couldn't nail it. He was like, oh, I bought it from you before. And I was like, what is it then? And he was saying this word that I couldn't. And it was a joint abbreviation of this plus this. Yeah. And it was 2 days later and you're just doing nothing and you go, oh, it's Sting! But there's a lot of fun, Yeah, there's a lot of fun with that. People don't know what they want, and we say, they just say a colour. I just honestly say whatever's in your head. And they say yellow, and I go, well, it's this Malbec. And they go, oh yeah, it was. It's because you pay attention to how they think. And I love it. In fact, I probably spend a little bit too much time analysing that part of the human brain and why it's not, we're not talking about 40-year-old vines or acidity levels or the strain of yeast in this beer, is because our basic bread and butter customer does not know any of that. And if we were to talk to them about it, they would probably be more scared and leave. So I mean, I think a lot of the staff members I've had over the years who have been very, very trained up and had a lot of training and in beer and wine and really, really enthusiastic. I'm like, you gotta watch. I get there's a lot of stuff in your head, but I apologise now because I don't think you're going to get to use a huge amount of it. Because I really don't. There's people who want to stand and listen to us talk geekery for hours and hours, and we do that, and that's fine. But 80% of the time, it's introducing someone fresh-faced into Gammery or Augustine or Hell.
Yeah.
And that's great. I love that, because to be honest, that's the kick that I first got, was people who know nothing about this. You know, people who are tickers and all that are already taken care of, because they know and drink stuff quicker than I do. You know, they can get stuff supplied-wise quicker than I can. I learned that quite early on, and that's some of the stuff you got to pay attention to online, is because, you know, a lot of these guys are so connected in the beer world that they're buying crazy good stuff. But you know, independent shops, they're very, really nice, and they try, and like, some of them are so nice, in fact, that they try and spread their purchases around all of us, which is amazing. It's really inspiring, you know. I mean, like, wow, you go and buy, like, they'll buy one bottle from here and one bottle from there, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's really nice of you.
It is a lovely scene.
It is. You know, people are really good like that in the beer world. The same with the wine world. It's just the wine world kind of, it's a bit quieter, I guess. You know, Twitter and Facebook it's not filled with it, or maybe I'm just not in the right forums. But you know, I love the wine world as well. There's good people in it, but it works differently. It's already been sorted. You know, this is where this is all going.
That was going to be my next question.
Oh right, okay. Sorry, I'm rambling. Where's it all going? Well, there's no bubble. I don't think there's any bubble to be burst. I think that the way that we purchase anyway, sadly, is these days I'm saying no a lot more than I'm saying yes, because the mix, as I said at the start, you know, the mix of me with my instinct and a little bit of numbers, and then Richard with a lot more, you know, factors and percentages and all this. Mix that two together, and you know, a couple of years back we started to, you know, I'd always like to, you know, if say it's a two-man small Scottish brewery, immediately, like, you know, I want to, you're me, you know, you're a small independent business, I want to help you, and if we have a shelf that we can sell your stuff, totally. You know, and it used to be as simple as, you know, is it drinkable, is it, you know, and we get a sample, sometimes not, because, you know, sometimes they're so small that maybe they haven't got to that stage yet, so sometimes it'd be on spec. And there wasn't anything completely dire we've ever bought in, but more and more you realise that the level sometimes of talent is maybe not quite to where the bar is. Right. And over the last couple of years, the bar's got higher and higher and higher until you know, our customer base is drinking really shit hot stuff. Even the people who don't really maybe know what that stuff is, if we don't get the chance to. But we pay very much attention to what people are buying and why, and we discuss it, we'll note it down, it will go into the thing for the week. You're stopping people sometimes and being like, do you know this is breaded, do you know this is a sour, do you know this is non-alcoholic, you know, all these things. So and you, especially with the sours, obviously, someone picks up a lambic because it's got a pretty label, you know, you can usually tell.
Cherries on it.
So yeah, all of these things come into it, but with the smaller brewers, you know, I feel bad because it's not that their beer's bad. It's not, and this is over years, so I'm not saying any specific names or anything, but there's stuff that's just not suited to. There's stuff that we know, well, we can use to a certain degree, that we know it won't fly off the shelf, and that it'll be a struggle for us to do it. Mostly, you know, if we do get samples, is we make sure that we all try them together, we discuss it, see who does like it, who doesn't like it. We don't all have to like it. Even if one of us thinks it's very good, then you have to fight your corner, you know, tasting notes, such. And we'll do it blind with the pricing, so you don't know what you're going to be selling it at until we decide, because we always say, you know, what would you sell this at? Okay. You know, that's something that I certainly used to do with McKellar a lot. McKellar and some of these, you know, brands from well, you know, far away, but it's brands with a higher price point. You know, say it's a McKellar Pilsner, you know, it can be anything from $3.50 to $4.50. But if you do that blind with your team and you kind of say to them, you know, try this Pils, and you try, oh, it's really, really nice. Yeah, we should get this in. So how much would you sell it for? Oh, I don't know, $3.20 for a 33. No, it's like, you know, £5 for a 500. You know, and you're like, oh no, I couldn't do that. You know, and you could, to the right person. Anything's achievable. But would we deliberately do that to ourselves? Would we tie up that money? Would we deliberately, you know, well, also the other thing is it can have a negative effect on your business. You know, people thinking you're trying to punt just a lager for a fiver. You know, it is our job to kind of show them the difference between this. sometimes you get the chance, sometimes you're not. But really, after that, there's just little details on how important is this beer.
Yeah.
And when it comes to Scotland, then obviously these things come into it. And, you know, it used to be just the ethos, the story. It's like, well, this is a guy in a shed out here, and he's made beer, and he's just quit his job, and he's trying to make some money. Do you want to support that?
Yeah.
And yeah, of course. You know, certainly I used to get a lot of sales that way. But over time, I think that all of the really, really good stuff keeps coming in, just kind of naturally as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's kind of dark, maybe putting a bit of a dark shadow over some of the stuff that's good, but starting to be viewed as not so good,
right.
or you know, less good, and to the point of, and yeah, beer forums, word of mouth, pubs, cliques, all these things are a bit of a harsh world when it comes down to it.
Yeah.
And you know, I never, you know, these guys that I've tried to help out, you know, you know, you can see some of the backlash that some of them get, you know, like, oh, that beer's shit. You know what I mean? You must hear it all the time in the world of beer, you know, this beer's shit, and then I'll tell you why it's shit. But you know, I'm kind of the ilk, and this is why I have to stay away from it, because it does angers me a bit, right. And I would pipe up too much if I was to get involved. I did used to, but I'd keep it off the internet. And it's more that, you know, remember that, you know, this is a business. This is guys invested time and effort into it. He's done his best. You know, there is such a thing left in the world as constructive criticism. You know, and if you guys who, excuse me, but work 9 to 5 in a bank all week and then become a weekend warrior on your keyboard, you know, are telling me that this guy should go and jump off a cliff. Oh, well, maybe you could brew a beer. You know, I don't brew. I don't pretend to brew. You know, I don't have time. I'd love to, and the reason that I'd love to do it is so that I would feel validated that I could talk about certain aspects of structure. You know, I can talk about the beer as a whole, I can talk about the hops involved and the influence, I think, but at the scientific level, you know, I could tell you, I've learned a few things, but I couldn't go into the absolute, you know, when I talk with brewers and stuff, some of the stuff I'm always picking up little tidbits of information. But that's one of the reasons I want to do it for myself, is so I could actually talk about it honestly and feel like I wouldn't, you know, a lot of brewers do ask us sometimes what do we want from them, you know, what would we want them to make, and we try not, because I do think it's insulting to bounce off another beer and say, well, from this beer it has this aspect that maybe you'd want to incorporate into this beer, you know, and that's the safest and politest way of doing it, I think, you know, without saying something stupid like, you know, make it more hoppy, or make it darker,
add
or
cherries,
you know, put it in a barrel, you know, because, you know, saying this stuff again for brewers must be a real pain in the arse, because all of these things, including the barrel, costs a huge amount of money, and it ain't that simple, you know, making a hoppy IPA. So, you know, with that though, I feel that's my first, you know, it's first real moment, you know, the real hard thing I've had to do is start to kind of sit down, and I try and do it in person. You know, I'm not saying I say no to everybody, but it's getting rarer and rarer that somebody comes into the market having looked at everything. I don't expect everyone to, even the Harriet Watt guys. You know, it's the business side plus what's going on. You know, the whole social aspect of it, and then what you know, the quality. You know, it's like how good is your beer, and how good do you honestly think it is? Yeah. I mean, I've heard all sorts of stories from small brewers where they don't want to use certain types of hops because, well, I don't know. I mean, they'll say like they're not sustainable. You know, they're not going to be around all the time. Okay. And that's right. That's true. But you know, it's this balance between business and passion, I guess, or integrity maybe. Where everybody, you know, you should only really be selling honest products, right? Like the cool guys and the guys that are doing this and the guys that are doing that. You don't want to sell these guys because they're involved with these people. You don't sell these guys because they've got this label going on, or they did this campaign where it was a little bit maybe construed in some circles as sexist, or this. You know, there's a million things. And you have to stop, because if you find a great product, you're like, wait a minute, you know, there was this thing about it, and I'm sure, you know, over the years you've heard. I mean, obviously, I'll mention Brewmeister. Things like that is probably a good example. I think that was actually a brilliant thing to happen. As much as it annoyed and upset the whole wave, I think that it did. I think that it should do, if it did go as far as I thought it was, show a lot of brewers coming into the scene what not to do.
Yeah.
And there you go, a small independent Scottish business that just put everybody right off of them. But they were, well, not brilliant brewers, but again, that's that level where I don't want to make any major quotes here, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff like ripped off from Brewdog maybe, or like you can see where a company sat down and went, oh, these guys are doing good, so we'll take a bit of that and we'll try and incorporate that. I mean, everybody does it, and Brewdog's an easy target for that sort of thing. In fact, I think they're proud of it. Mixing, doing the ethanol thing and topping up a very strong beer to be the strongest beer in the world. That as a whole, I mean, I hope that everybody looked at that and realised what it was. It wasn't, I mean, it was that it was bad practice. You shouldn't be doing that legally, but also it's coming into it and trying to do what's been done already. Like, I'd say the only constant that I think is a really good thing that people can still do is make an IPA. But you've got to make an IPA that fits the bill right now. I mean, it's got to be kind of, well, it doesn't have to be tropical, but it should have that edge of fruit that people like. Bitterness, but maybe not killer. I mean, it depends on who you're aiming it at. But I think that if any brewery right now, a 2 or 1 man brewery, came to me and said, right, new brewery, here you go, here's our first beer. If it was a hoppy IPA at a good price, chances are most of us would take it. Because it's a product that you can work with. It's a product that people will like. It's a product that I think 60 to probably 70% of everyone's business in this city, in this country, is still hyped up about. Don't get me wrong, I am a bit, not bored of IPA, but I am surprised that our kegerator, for instance, we always have IPA on it. That's because when I put on other stuff, it slows it down. We've tried, but I'm bringing back the other taps. That's why I brought in other taps, so I could do more styles, because I was like, well, I want to keep people happy
with the IPA,
but I don't just want to do IPA every week. I mean, Jesus Christ, So it's stuff like that. The same with these businesses, where I think the quality is going to be the people that are still standing. It's going to be quality thought about. People who come into it need to get it. It is a bit of a scene, and it moves very fast. And if you come in and you slip up and you say the wrong thing, or you use the wrong glass, or use the wrong cap, I mean, you're just giving fodder for the bloggers and for the haters, or the intense people. And trust me, there's a lot of people out there seem to be waiting on the sidelines to just naysay for some reason. I don't know why. They enjoy it. I guess it's Britain, right? And we love to take a good thing and pick it to pieces. And I kind of hate that part of it, but I'm lucky in my job that I get to kind of just zone that shit out. I'm here to sell beer and enjoy it, and that's what I love, is the people come in and are really chatting about beer all the time, chatting about wine, and we can talk about gin, and they really enjoy it, and they go away and they come back, and we and you just check. That's our main job, is I tell the guys, is we always check that things went well, and we get 3 chances. If someone comes in and 3 times over, it's never happened luckily enough, but if they come in for something and they keep coming back saying, no, this was crap, this was wrong, this was overpriced, this was whatever it is, then we've failed. Completely failed. I mean, you shouldn't even get 3 chances, it should be 2, but I kind of made it a round number at the start, and luckily enough we've never had any complaints or anything like that. And that's job number 1. If you can control everything that happens, I mean, it's at, we've got a lot of customers, and we move a lot of product, and the bit in between, it would be very easy to just kind of graze over it and be like, oh well, so what? This is it's ullage or whatever. You can't get them all. But no, at this level, well, a 3-4 man team, you should be able to control that and make sure that everybody's happy. You at least did your job. And that's all you can do. As I'm saying it, it's easier said than done. To concentrate on that, because you worry about it all the time. Worry about what people think of us, and customers think of us, and whether they they just view us as another expensive independent, but you've got to let all that stuff go. I mean, it took me first 2 years to get through all of that stuff, and I'd go a lot to James, and friends of mine in the trade, and be like, oh, Jesus, it's just all of this stuff, and my phone just won't stop ringing, and all of these things, and I'm trying to get my work done, but this thing's happening. But that's it's what you sign up for. And let's be honest, you bloody love it. Love every moment of it. Even the moments when you're bitching and moaning, complaining, but you just I couldn't get enough of it. No, seriously. But you just want it to be a little bit easier, not quite as backbreaking.
Well, you must be doing a good job, because think you won Retailer of the Award.
Oh yeah.
Year award again.
Yeah,
like
that was
yeah.
these things are really nice. You know, they're good for. I mean, obviously everyone, you know, we're busy, but we can always do with more customers. And I think stuff like that puts a seal of approval on their first.
Yes.
You know, to see us, and they say, oh, they won some awards, so they'll feel safer about phoning us for a request or whatever. You know. Obviously, there's a million awards in the world. There's a million awards in the beer world as well, and you know, they all are nice, and circles have pinned you as the best. But you know, certainly, best retail in Scotland is a nice phrase, but you know, we're a little beer shop in Cannon Mills. I think that every one of our shops, you know, that we have in this city are all just outstanding. Like you know. And I don't want them thinking that I'm walking around with a big cheesy grin on myself going, yeah, best in Scotland, man. I mean, it's to do with Off Licence News, who's really good, and yeah, it's nice because we went down to Westminster. I mean, the last year when we won it, oh, that was a hell of a laugh, like getting around Westminster, like cutting around Westminster with you know, the MSP that took us around to give us a tour afterwards and stuff, and I think that was the first year they did this. What's it called? The all-party parliamentary beer group, and there's all these MPs involved in beer to a degree, and their local areas and all this. So it was a good idea. It is a good idea. It's a great idea, and this year they'd made it a little. They'd upgraded it quite a bit, and obviously the first year when I went, I met some really good people who I did a lot of good business with as well. In fact, so it was a great schmoozy event. And there was some guys, you know, after we'd all got presented our awards, we're all hanging around drinking some beer and stuff and all of them, because they were all regions of England. So I was the only guy with a country. And I remember they all came up to me and said, you know, it's like, oh yeah, so, you know, northeast of whatever, and you know, like, oh, you've got whole of Scotland. And at first I was like, yeah, and then it was like everyone was saying it to me. I was like, all right, you know, I could have invited other people, you know, they picked it, you know. You're making me say this is scary now. It's like a whole country, you know. But I didn't really think we'd get it 2 years in a row. But it's nice that we did.
Congratulations.
Yeah, it was, and it's it was nice to go down there and obviously a great amount of business done in down in London. You get to see a lot of good places, good shops. Yeah. Didn't spend all my time working though, but not a big fan of London. Oh well, it's too busy for me.
That's far enough away.
Yeah, exactly. But no, it's really good, and like you say, the main thing, I think the first year we won it, it was a really good pat in the back. I thought, it feels like that, you know. But we don't take, you know, huge amounts of, you know, we know it's just one award. I mean, there's millions of retailer awards and all that, so. But you know, don't get me wrong, I'm not upset about it. It's nice to think that we must be doing something right if there was customers involved in voting, and then there was other people, experts as they tell me, who helped pick. So you know, there's got to be some sort of something that we've done right at some point to lead to that. You know.
Well, absolutely. So well, I'm hoping you can sell me a beer.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks for talking to me. This has been brilliant.
No, anytime. It's excellent. I'll ramble on.
Come upstairs and I think I have a fair idea of what I want.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks again to Pete for talking to me. You can keep up to date with his selection on his website on www.thebeerhive.co.uk. He's got a news section there where he posts quite frequently. So, till next time.